So today I have a request to change a door from this material to a wood material. So I want to show you how I would go about doing that. So let's get inside of our group here and select our door. The first thing we need to do is create our quads to have the texture follow. So I'm going to get into this first round piece here. We're going to go into monochrome mode. I'm going to turn on hidden edges, and it looks like we're good to go. Everything looks like it is quads, but if this for some reason wasn't divided this way, I'll show you how to do that in a second. So let's grab our wood material that we're going to be using, and this one here, and I'm going to get in here. We're going to use through paint from Frito 6, and I am still using the original through paint, and we are going to go and click on this little button here under UV painting called Quad Mesh UV. We're going to put it on surface mode, and we're just going to come in here and put our red axis on this long vertical edge and click. We're going to go back to textured mode so we can see what's happening. We're actually in natural UV mode, and this is what would happen. You can see the texture is just following the direction of the canvas, right? So every material that you bring into SketchUp or any program, any texture, it has to be square or rectangular. It's just the nature of the way that textures or materials or photos or images, everything has square corners, obviously. So what we need to do is not have this follow its natural orientation, but we want it to follow the curve. So we are going to deform it around these quad faces right here. So let's go to Quad Mesh UV and paint this again. It's called through paint, and we're just going to click again with the red on this long edge here, and now look at the difference. This is following our shape, and we could get in here and now actually play with the scale transforms and adjust this. So it's looking a little bit segmented for my taste. I would probably bump up the segment count here, and I could do that a couple ways. The quickest way is obviously to just redraw it, but I'm going to delete that one edge. We're going to get in here. I'm going to use a plugin from Curic called to Arc, and I think it's in the tools menu. Convert edges to arc, like so. And now this will open up the ability to take that curve and increase my segment count. So let's go from, what does that say, 26? Let's go to 36. All right. If we want it really smooth, we could go up to 48. You don't need to go much higher than that. It won't visibly be noticeable at a certain point, and the results are negligible. So now we can offset this, right? But I want to offset it from this edge to this edge. We're going to have a little piece here hanging on. I'm going to deselect everything, run the erase stray curves plugin. That'll delete them from both sides at the same time. And now what I'm going to do is make sure that I add back in my joint. So if I turn on my hidden edges, I lost all of my quads in here that were supporting my texture. So all I have to do, click here, and I'm going to turn on hidden geometry, and I don't want to select everything. I just want to select here that we just created, and I'm also going to select one edge, and we're going to use a plugin called Split Tools, and we're going to use this one here, Split to Sausage or Split Sausage, and all that's going to do is come and put divisions in between our endpoints, right? So when we drew out the curve and we increased the segments and then we offset it, we offset this line to this line, but it respectively brought the endpoints down kind of parallel edge here, but it kept it in a way that the orientation made this kind of like a brick arch, if you will, right? So each one of these quads is naturally tapering, right? So it's wider on this side than it is on this side. And what that is doing when we're using quad face tools, all that it's doing, it's automating the process. It would take way too long for it would be time prohibitive for you to do this by hand, but what it's essentially doing, if we would use the native SketchUp tools, is taking a texture like this, right? And let's go into the texture and go to position. If you think about this, what's happening, it's kind of taking each pin and bringing it down to the endpoints like this, right? So what is that doing? That is skewing the texture slightly so that it is kind of more trapezoidal, or it's wider at the top and tapers down, right? But it's doing it across many different faces. This is why it's called Quad Map UV, and that's why it requires quads to work, because it needs 4 corners to pin our square or rectangular image to, and that is the process that it uses to deform it, right? So if you don't have 4 corners, it can't work because it doesn't have something to correspond between the corners of the image and the corners of the geometry, right? So it needs to have both of those things in order to work. So I hope that makes it a little more clear and understandable of how that works. And then it kind of helps you to model in a way that you're preparing the geometry to receive a texture deformation, let's say. So the texture is being deformed around this arch. All right, so in order for Quad Mesh UV to work surface mode, we would want to soften all of the edges on the interior of this arch. Now, if I call it here and I'm in selection mode surface, it's not going to paint across these. Sometimes this is useful. You can see that we are painting across this edge because it is softened. But sometimes if we need to be a little more controlled, we can keep our hard edges and then drag and paint that way. So it's doing the same thing. We're just having a little bit more control. So maybe we were going to go to a different material, or we needed to kind of troubleshoot an area where maybe there wasn't a quad and we were getting some errors, and we can paint up to that area. And then sometimes what I'll do, if I can't make a quad, or if there's something that just has to be n-gon, they call it, or more than a 4-sided polygon, then you can come in and sample the one next to it and paint this. It'll be kind of close. It's going off in this direction, but visually it would be a little bit hard to tell. If you had to manually go in, you could also paint in from the adjoining one that does have the Quad Mesh UV. You can paint the one next to it. You can see that it's obviously noticeable if you do that too much, but if you need to get away with it in a corner or something, if you're doing a paver patio, let's say, and the border, sometimes there's mitered edges and just the way things work out, you can't get a true quad. This is a good way to go about that. So what I would typically do is just soften this. So we're going to go to soften smooth, and let's turn on soften coplanar, right? So that just softened all of these coplanar edges, and now we can just get in like we did initially. I already painted this. It's telling me now that it has more than 4 faces, or more than 4 edges, right? So this is the error you get if it's not a quad. And to troubleshoot that, I can double click on this, deselect that face, and come up here, and it's telling me I have 5 edges, right? So that means I have somewhere in here is an extra endpoint. So if you have Vertex tools, a quick way to kind of inspect this would be to turn on Vertex tools and see if you see any other vertices popping up, like maybe there's a break somewhere. I am guessing that I have a double vertice right here, and I do. So whenever this offset and it broke right here, it didn't weld these together into one. I can do that with Vertex tools, or we could also just delete that edge there and redraw it. You just want to be careful with these softened edges. You might want to go back in and just harden everything really quick. We could delete that and just make sure. The reason that happened is we need to explode this curve, right, like that, and maybe this side as well. We should be able to select that, grab that endpoint, go to that endpoint, and now this shouldn't give us that error anymore. And we can re-soften everything, just uncheck and recheck soften coplanar, and turn up our angle between degree, maybe 15 or so. And now, zoom out here. If you've already painted something with through paint and you want to paint over it, just tap Control, and that'll give you your axis orientation again. So what this is, really quick, I can just explain. If you're new to through paint, the axis orientation that you see is defining where the first, again, so every image has a rectangular shape, right? So it's a box, a square, a rectangle. On the image is a bottom, a left, a right, a top. So what you're doing is defining where the start point of, I think it's the lower left corner of the image, is going to correspond with this axis, right? So if I would put, let's say, my red axis on this edge over here, then that bottom right is going to start there of the image. If I put it over here, it's going to start there of the texture, right? So I'm just going to put it here. I know that that worked before, and you do see a little bit of deviation in here. It's not lining up texture to texture. There is a way to fix that. It gets a little more advanced, but if we would use quad face tools, which is a tool set specifically for working with quads, which we are because we're texturing in a quad mesh scenario, what we could do is select one of these edges and then ring select all of them. And if you zoom out, you'll see that we've, just by using this button, selected all of these edges here that make up these quads. So this is called a ring selection in any other software, Blender, 3ds Max. It's very common. Modeling is the default way that most people model. What we want to do is connect this ring with some inner edges, and we do that with this button here, connect, and I have this turned way up, so let's go down to maybe like something like that. Hit OK. All right, so it broke our initial texturing that we did. We're just going to come in and kind of resoften everything. And now if I would, let me deselect, if we would retexture this in the same orientation, I'm putting that red on the same edge, you can see now where we did have that deviation between that texture is now solved, right? So if you're getting something that you need to be more precise and you want it to line up and you need to be more accurate, we want to add more support edges and build a wire grid essentially, right? So we're giving it more information and we're creating more quads, right? So remember when we were showing how we pinned it to the corners, so now it has more corners to kind of figure out where to pin it to, and you're going to get a more accurate transition from one quad to the next, just on the sheer fact that there's more information for the plugin to work with. Now be careful, it does slow down your ability to manipulate. This isn't too bad, but in some bigger shapes, this will slow down your ability to scale in real time. That looks pretty good. We can turn off hidden geometry and just kind of take a look at this, and I think that's pretty good. That looks like some solid texturing there. All right, so now we have a piece here that I extracted this initially, so I need to add some thickness to it, and we can't just push pull it, right? Because we obviously have softened edges, so we would want to use something like joint push pull. We just want to make sure that we're not bringing in those interior edges. I used joint push pull thicken, so I probably could have gone a little bit thicker. I'm gonna use Frito's auto reverse faces there to fix that little bit of an issue, and it transferred our quad mapping from one side to another, so that's kind of a good thing with joint push pull. See here, if I could just grab this face, something is a little bit too softened, and it's probably down here, and I'm just gonna dial back my soften angle a little bit. I just want to grab this face and make this a little bit thicker. We could also just obviously scale it. When you scale something, it will have an effect on the texturing unless you hit scale definition, but I'm gonna come here and select all the way around. And I'm doing this with Selection Toys has an option from TomTom. When you select one edge, where is it? It's called Select Quad Face Loop. Oh, I think you just have to have one edge selected in the context menu. And then you should have an option here called Select Quad Face Loops. And that will select all the way around. And now I can texture this. I don't need to use Quad Mesh UV right here because we don't need to actually deform this texture anymore. When you're in this flat orientation, you need to deform it around here. But here, if you look, none of these are trapezoidal shapes. They're all true quads, right? So you can texture this with normal or natural UV mode and it would work just the same. You don't need to use Quad Mesh UV on the interior edges like that. It would work as well. And there we go, there's our frame. And we just want to kind of repeat this process with the rest of the door. So this door is coming to me from Revit. I didn't model it initially, so I'm working with geometry that's already here, having to kind of extract out what I'm working on. So let's say this piece here, I'm going to use Quad Face Tools Grow Selection, and then we're going to group this and I'm going to isolate it. And we could close kind of the back if we wanted. I just want it to show me the thickness. I'm going to select everything. I just group this back face. I'm going to select everything, deselect the front face, and then delete everything else. And I also have these here, which I'm going to group. I need to figure out where these holes are. So let's just grab this set of edges here. Actually, let's grab these as well. And I'm using Path Select from Profile Builder 3. I'm just going to copy those and let's bring it into here. And I'm going to make an empty group and just paste these in here, close the faces, and I'm just going to push pull these out. And then I'm just going to use these to intersect. Let's cut them, get inside of our group here, paste them in, intersect, and then we can delete these faces here. So let's go back to... All right, so I'm going to connect here this way. And we need to connect across the top. So I'm going to grab this piece and offset it and try to snap it. So I'm going to grab this piece right here, and then I'm going to undo back to there and then paste that piece in. Did I not copy it? Hold on. Let's try to redo. But we're going to basically do the same thing here, but this is just kind of showing how we would do it with some existing geometry. So let's try to do that again. Put that in there. Let's grab this, undo. Okay, there's our inner piece, and I'll probably cut it here. You're thinking about the wood grain when you're doing this. So let's go back into texture mode here, and I don't need to be in UV mode for this. And I'll just do a quick cleanup on these just to make sure. And now we just have this arch. So very similar situation. Let's group it and get in. I'm just going to drop a texture in to make it easier to see. And I'm pretty sure that this isn't going to work out if I do split sausage again. Looking at, all right, so there's an extra endpoint in here that we need to clean up. So I'm going to use a plugin from Frito called Remove Lonely Vertices. And it's going to go in here and try to find anything that it can remove. And now let's try it again. Still not working. So there's probably an endpoint like right here that might not be necessary. But even if we got rid of this, I can tell that this isn't lining up in the way that I would want it to. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this interior set of edges here. We're going to convert it to a construction guide. Hey, sorry to interrupt everybody. I wanted to point something out that I noticed as I'm watching this back in editing, a mistake that I made that affects the door later on as I'm building it. And I didn't realize it in the moment, but what happened here was this again came over from Revit. So I didn't build this original model. And for whatever reason, the way that Revit created this door, it has this outer part of this door frame as rounded, and the inner part has a more distinct transition here between this straight edge and the arch top, right? So it's more of like an apex style door. I'm not sure what the proper term is, something like that. So what I made the mistake of, as I was trying to fix the vertices between one side and another to prepare it for quad mapping so we could deform the texture, I converted this inner set of edges to a construction guide and then relied on this outer set of edges and re-offset that, hence turning that door frame into a rounded top and completely losing this stronger transition point. So then I have a round top door in a frame on the outside that we built previously that didn't match up. And there was like some gaps in it as I was building later on, and I didn't understand why or where I had gone wrong. But now that I'm watching it back, it was this very moment that I made the decision to go from the outside in instead of the inside out that affected the shape of the door. So those little things matter. I just wanted to point that out. As the video goes on, you'll see that things don't match up, and this very point is why. So back to the video. Then I'm going to grab this exterior set of edges here. And it's kind of our chance too, if we want to increase the segment count here, we could do it at this point. Run Curic edges to arc again. And then let's bring this up to maybe 42 or so. And now let's grab all these edges. Let's offset them to the construction guide we made. It's a little bit off here, but that's, it's just kind of the shape. So we kind of have to pick where we want to snap to. I say, let's go here. It should be fine. I think it's just glass in there anyway. We can delete those construction guides and now deselect everything, and let's move that endpoint down to there so we're not creating an extra vertice by drawing an edge. And now let's try to make the face, and we should be a lot better. Now let's come here, let's run split sausage, and there we go. Now we have good clean quads and a good clean arc. Let's soften it again, and now we can just come in here and drop it in there. Oh, let's go to quad mesh UV mode. Up to you if you wanted to add additional segments. Again, I would just do it this way. Just select there, ring select, go here, do it again, re-soften, and then just reapply, and you should be good. Super clean. Now we just want to add our thickness, and let's go joint push pull thicken, and I'm going to grab here. I'm going to go quad face loop, and then I'm just going to texture here with natural UV mode, put my red on the edge here, and that should have the texture follow the way I want. It's turned 90 degrees right now, so I want that autosave. There we go. Now we should be good. So we have our outer piece, our inner door. We have some trim here that's going to need that as well, and we may not need any of this. Maybe this frame here. Delete everything else, and that way I can just triple click and group these. This is kind of the interior trim piece. We're not going to see that in the renders. I think what I'm going to do is just grab that, group it, or not group it, grab it and copy it, and then I'm going to push pull that in and delete that whole, make an empty group, paste that in there, and then just redouble click the push pull to add that original thickness. So we basically just extracted it out and put it in its own group, so it's not sticking to this anymore. Now we have this here. Let's run a cleanup on it. Let's group it. I can see there's some extra edges in here. It's a little weird. I'm going to do the same thing. Grab the front face. I'm going to push pull this in, delete everything, paste that front face, and then push pull it again, and it'll be the same thickness. It should be a little bit cleaner. Try to run cleanup on it again and run it using Fixit 101. You can see that it's really weird. It's missing the vertex distribution, or the endpoint distribution is very uneven for whatever reason. It's even on this side, uneven on this side. It's missing in through here. So this isn't going to line up from front to back, right? It looks like this side is good. So I'm going to grab these edges here like so, and I'm going to copy them. I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to use convert edges to construction guides, and I'm going to paste that one single edge back in. I'm going to re-offset it from that point to this point right here. If I can snap to it, there we go. And now I'm going to connect here, make group or make face, and should just be able, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this piece because as far as like making the edge smooth and stuff, it's minor. We should be good now. Let's soften, and we can just come in here and paint quad mesh UV like so. Let's go back to texture mode, and now let's go joint push pull thicken, and let's snap to there. And now we can delete our construction guides, and that just gave us something to reference for our thickness. I'm going to click this edge. I'm going to go select quad face loop, and I'm just going to drop that in there. Now we should be good front to back. That piece is done. If we really wanted to, we could get in pretty quickly. I'll do it just one more time for repetition. It's going to analyze the vertices here. I don't think it's going to line up. Let's see. Same deal. I'm going to pick whichever side I think is correct. I like to go outside to in usually if I can. So I'm going to copy that, select all, convert to construction guides, paste in there, offset. We're going to snap there. I'm going to grab all of those. I'm going to connect them using S4U connect plugin, reverse these faces. We're going to grab this edge here. We're going to run split sausage like so. We're going to soften this, and then we're going to drop our material in, go back to texture mode like so. Joint push pull thicken. I'm going to grab quad face loop from this edge right here if I can. No, it's a guide. Let me delete my guides. That's right. Turn on hidden geometry. Now I should have turn on hidden geometry. Now I can select that edge, do select quad face loop, and now we can paint there with the red axis on a long edge. And just like that, we have the back side of our door. Just for the sake of time, I am just going to drop texture in here. I don't think quad face, it might work here. Let's see. No. Let's try just normal. Put the red there on the long edge. In a situation like this, we can also, if it's square, and we can use split donut, and that should add our connecting edges on the corners. Now we can just grab like this, put our red there, grab here, put our red there. And that's making sure that it's aligned to that longest edge in the right orientation. Put our red there, and select all, and just add a little thickness to this. Delete this side here, and I'm gonna bring a copy of this over. with Curic Align, like so. And actually, I think I want to turn the orientation of the wood here. And you don't need to get into the group to paint with through paint. And I want to make these a little bit more random so it doesn't look scale a little bit on this side. So this is an oak wood material, and let's just do our mullions here. I'm just going to select all of these, sample what I just painted. I'm going to paint here with red on the longest edge, sample it, and now I'm just going to select all and paint those. And I could do the same thing here. And I can just grab these. I should still have that orientation in my paint bucket, and make sure I get, and same deal. We can grab here and here and just drop our material in, and we should be golden. We're not viewing it from this side, so that's okay. Oh, I think that's the glass from Revit. Let me just pull that. Actually, let's just delete that. It looks weird. And let's just get in and extract our glass out of this shape. So we're just going to get in here and just redraw an edge. Oops, we don't have I forgot it's not closed. So let's just draw an edge across the bottom to close the shape. And now we have a face. We can group, reverse it, and let's just bring it to the middle here. And I'm gonna use the same glass material from the rest of the house so that it matches in the render engine. I guess it doesn't need to be all the way down there, but you won't see it anyway. So let me grab the glass here. And I'm going to use just natural UV front and back mode just to make sure it's painted on both sides. And there we go. We took the door here and retextured it. Oh, the one thing I didn't realize here was that there was a whole other mullion up here that is off. And these little things make a huge difference. I know some people might think it's a waste. The eye will go to these things, especially when wood grain is facing the proper direction and orientation. This plugin I'm using here is Curic OI, Offset Intersect, or the DIO Draw In Object plugin, and this is called the chalk line. I think the tool is available in both of those plugins. That looks pretty good. I'm missing a piece here. And I think we just have to move this back a hair. And maybe here as well. Just tap the left arrow to snap to the green, back this up just a hair. Where is our glass? Also forgot to add some thickness here as well. So these should all be pre-grouped here. So we could just use joint push pull thicken, and it's inside its own group and isolated. So there's the glass, yes, sitting in the middle, and quad face loop, and there we go. So we just got to get rid of this original glass here. And pull this out just a little bit thicker. And there's our finished door, fully textured, all the wood grain facing the right direction. Learned how to use quad mesh UV and how and why we deform textures around an arch, let's say. And I'm gonna bring this in just a hair. I think some of the walls poking through. And the other thing I would probably do, I'm assuming this is a double door and it just came over like, I don't want to get rid of these. I don't think they're doing anything. But we could also split this down the middle and get in. I would probably use split slice from S4U is my favorite way to do this. So I'm just going to grab there and just kind of use the same line and grab here and use the same line. And if we wanted, we could also just add a little gap here in a couple different ways. Pull out an 1/8 inch guide here, and I'm just going to, instead of doing these one at a time, I'm just going to grab everything, and we're going to use, let me see. And now we should be able to select in the middle and kind of take out this piece. Might be a little bit too thick, but I think from a distance, and then I'm just going to get in here really quick and drop it on the red. I don't even need to open the group if I can. There we go. So we could also do some chamfering if we wanted to add a little more softness to these edges. I'd probably go in and model some door handles, something like that. I feel like we lost something somehow. Was it when I was deleting? The one way I kind of remedy this sometimes is I'll just select things, copy it, and then I'll undo and see if maybe I can get back to where I may have accidentally deleted something. I don't know if I have enough undos or if it's going to let me. But if I do, then I can grab it. There we go. So it's there now. And I can delete all this and paste what I just copied back in. I think was just this, right? And now everything else should be. Okay, and just fix the little gap here in this piece. There's a little gap here that I'm going to bring down using Curix. And I'm going to do the same thing here with it. Okay, the glass is there. There's just a there, and then for some reason these mullions aren't lining up anymore. Let me select both of those, and we have room to bring them down. All right, I think we're good. Still a little gap in here. I think it's just coming over that way from Revit. I'm going to just bring this down a little bit further with Curix Stretch. And it's kind of like Vertex tools, but you can work outside of a group, and that way I can see what's happening a little better. All right, so that got rid of that little gap. And this outer shape is a little weird in how it doesn't follow the door, but I think for the most part, this should be good. Just need to throw a door handle on here on both sides, and I think we should be good. I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned something about texturing, quad mesh UV, how everything works, the logic behind it, and you're able to then apply it to your own projects. All right, thanks for watching. Hope everybody has a great day.